Hello, I'm Recoded Zaphod and welcome to another episode from the Centricraft-2 server. For the start of this episode, I'm heading over to the Halloween area that I made because there was a slight incident over here where Josh the Nerd pressed the button and instead of flinging out a wither skeleton or zombie, it flung up a creeper which exploded, which is quite entertaining but also did a bit of damage. So obviously I didn't light up the area down there well enough, and I had a creeper spawn in the mechanism and be able to be the trick instead of the wither skeletons or zombies. So yeah, this needs repairing, I guess. I think I might just fix up the aesthetics of the pumpkin rather than trying to fix the entire mechanism. And then these, I think, must have got exploded out of the dropper, which were all the treat boxes. So I think as they weren't claimed and it's been a long time since Halloween, I think I might just take these and add them back into my storage. And I think there's a couple over there as well. So yeah, I'm going to start by just fixing this up and taking these boxes back. And I've now fixed it up. And I've put a little sign up here which says, "Out of order, please summon your own demons and monsters." So yeah, if anyone comes in here wanting to do a trick or treat, they should realise that yeah, it's not fully working. Although I think this technically might still bounce a thing out. So if they want to try, they can, but yeah, I've closed it up so it looks alright and fits back into the surrounding area. I don't think there's too much damage done to the area around here. I think it was basically just the pumpkin itself and the mechanism underneath to spring the wither skeletons out. So yeah, I've got that done, and I think possibly this area needs blending into the surroundings a bit more, because it just sort of stops out here where I've got the large oak trees, and yeah, that sort of just ends. So I think maybe I should work on blending this a little bit. So maybe if I put a few more trees out over here or some bushes, just to have it decrease more gradually than having this sort of line of dark oak trees and then stop. Because initially it did have a fence, but I've removed that as well, because as it wasn't being used very much, I decided it didn't really need the fence. Also, you might notice I've got a charged creeper over here, and yeah, I don't know what to do with this guy. I suppose I could drop him into someone's base and get them scared, but I think I might be a little harsh if it blows up a load of their stuff. So yeah, I need to work out something to do with this guy, because I've got plenty of mob heads already. So given I managed to actually trap this one, I might use it for something special. But yeah, I think first thing I'm doing for the rest of this episode is doing some bushes and trying to blend this into the surroundings. And I might work a little bit on this sort of community area, because it's very square and sort of almost industrial at the moment. I'd quite like it to feel more homely. So maybe turn these sort of square fields into sort of shapely fields with walls around them. And this wall of bamboo is definitely contributing quite strongly to the more practical feel to the area rather than aesthetic. So yeah, I think I might time-lapse me doing some little bit of gardening around this Halloween area, and possibly get working on this as well. Now I've done that, I think I've got a slightly better fade into and out of this Halloween area with these extra trees and some bushes around the whole area. I might come back and put some more flowers in, possibly. If I fly away, there we go. But I think, yeah, just having these extra oak trees towards the outside just helps transition the area a little bit. So you've still got, you know, plants growing around here before it goes back to just grassland. And then this area, so I've taken all of the stuff down effectively, and now I need to basically rebuild all of it in a prettier fashion. So I think I want to build a little sort of farming cottage, and I think a good place for that would be up on this bit of hill just here. And I've done a little bit of terraforming, and I've plotted out where I want this little hut to go. And I'm pretty certain it's part of a community area, so I think it's okay putting it. It's quite far away from my base, but I think that's okay because it is, again, it's part of the community area and it's part of spawn, so it should be fine having it over here. And yeah, I want to go with a bit of a different shape to usual, trying to challenge myself a little bit and not build on the squares necessarily. And I've got this, yeah, I've got the hill shaped how I want it, I think. Obviously over here it needs some more work, and I'm not sure if I want to try and preserve all of these floating bits of grass as a special feature, but I have a feeling they won't fit in very well. So yeah, this should be big enough, and I should be able to put things like the enchanting setup, I think should fit in here just about. And yeah, I've got some gaps where I want the doors, and on the outside I want a sort of a lean-to with some like firewood underneath it. I think that'll work quite well. So yeah, I guess I've got to try and work out a sort of block palette for this and then try and get building. I definitely want some sort of mossy cobble in here because I love the mossy texture, and I think that'll add to a sort of almost overgrown farmhouse aesthetic. So I think that's definitely going to go in. So I'm probably going to need cobble as well. And then if the lean-to is probably going to be using wood, I probably want to incorporate that into the design. So yeah, I guess I'll get started and see how that goes. And I think again, this is probably going to look a lot better as a time lapse. So this is actually going to be rather a long time lapse, because I got started building this farmhouse, and I basically just carried on with the paths and all the farmland around it. So I'm going to give a bit of a voiceover to this one. So you can see I've gone for a sort of mossy palette for the bottom of the farmhouse, and I've gone for very interesting angles because I wanted not to build on the grid which Minecraft has, because I wanted to challenge myself a little bit. And you can see to the side of the house I've put in a little shelter which I will decorate later, and I've moved the enchanting setup into the house. So there's going to be a few things which will be inside the house, like some furnaces for smelting and the enchanter and an ender chest and those sort of things. So it'll still be the sort of community spawn area, even though it's now sort of a fully decorated farm style area. You might notice the windows for the upstairs I ended up doing differently to the downstairs, and that's because the black glass contrasted much better against the bone blocks which I was using for the upstairs walls, whereas in the stone and mossy stone and cobblestone and the grey textures I used white glass because I thought that that fit a lot better and you could see that it was a window. I tend not to go for completely clear glass because I feel you just don't see it there necessarily. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with the roof on this because not only did I have the two different angles and then intersecting at a really weird angle, I then tried to put a dormer roof, dormer window into the front, which was a bit tricky. I decided this needed a chimney, so I tried this, and I decided the orangey red bricks didn't fit with the rest of the build, so I went back to stone brick. which ties in with the bottom of the house being all stone. And you can see here I was making a sort of little wood pile, which is a sort of thing you would have, particularly as I've got a chimney, and you would be burning wood, so you'd want lots of wood outside, and it's got a little roof to keep it all dry. And I think that ended up looking quite good with the put out campfires and the oak logs. I also wanted to make it look a little bit more rundown, so I've done that already with the cobblestone texture and the mossy variants, but I put some vines on the walls and some of them will be growing, and I started putting leaves over the roof to look like some sort of more thick vines, or other types of hanging plants were just growing over the little farm cottage. And I really love the effect of having these overgrown houses. I'm just, very fond of it, and I think it breaks up any plain areas really well. So once I've done that, I got started on the paths here. So I was sort of putting flowers around the house and along where the entrance path was going to be. And you can see I tried to stick to lots of rose bushes because I was quite a fan of those, but I tried to sprinkle in the other two tall flowers as well. And then I got started on the path here, and I've been trying to mix in lots of different materials to these paths. The path block is good because it varies the height a little bit, and for the slabs going up and down the steps I was using some cobblestone and mossy cobblestone slabs, as that sort of blended into the grass quite well, and of course into the palette of the farmhouse cottage bit as well. I used a lot of podzol. I'm really keen on the podzol in the paths. I think it works really well, and the coarse dirt as well is also really good. I tried to keep quite a lot of grey blocks, so some cobblestone, and I tried to get some gravel in there, just because one part of it is leading to a stone road, so I want that to transition fairly smoothly, so keeping some grey textures in there helps the transition a little bit. And also it sort of just gives a bit more contrast than just a muddy path. See here, I started layering out where I want my fields of crops to go, and I'm giving them hedges which divide them rather than fences, because hedges I feel make it look more natural, and I'm a big fan of lots of leaves everywhere, particularly with the custom bushier leaves texture that I have, which I know not everyone will be able to see, but I get to see it and I quite like it, and I think they look good without the bushy textures as well. They just look even better with them. So you can see I added in all the different farms of all the different crops which were originally in the community area, and I tried to put them into strips so they looked like they'd been planted along a line, but I tried to keep the strips not aligned to the grid. So I try to keep them at least slightly diagonal. You might notice a lot of my building style here is inspired by FWhip, who does a lot of this sort of style of farmland. And now I'm moving on to the animal pens, because they were in these small little squares, and I thought they could definitely have a much more appropriate area for each of them. So I split up the different animals into individual pens. I tried to keep them sort of a round shape for the fence, and then I started decorating them. So for the pigs, I wanted it looking really muddy, because that's the association with pigs being in sort of muddy places and rolling around in the mud. So I put in a little pond, which would also be where they drink from, and then the rest of it's all very muddy. I even put some soul sand in there, which is good texture, and I gave them a bit of a roof, and you can see some hay bales under some trapdoors to look like a feeding trough. And I used similar techniques for the feeding trough for the sheep and the water troughs. And then for the cows, I did a big pile of wheat, because cows are a lot bigger, and I've seen similar sort of things before in fields. And I used the same sheep water trough for the cows, and tried to decorate it so it's muddier around the water trough and more dry dirt away from the water troughs. I don't know how much that effect comes through, but I like that I did it. Then for the chickens, I decided they didn't actually need as big an area as I originally made, I gave them a little pond, and I started on a chicken coop, which trapdoors are so useful. Using them as build has made them my favourite block, especially the spruce trapdoors. I got some different types of trapdoors into the chicken coop and gave it some floor decorations and put some wheat inside, so you can see the chickens sort of feeding while inside. And now that it's done, I'm going to take a walk through it in first person, so you can take a look around. You can see I've also added in these barrels by the entrance to each one of these, and the sheep look like they might have got their pathfinding confused by standing on the trapdoors. Anyway, yeah, I added barrels, so it will contain stuff they eat or stuff they drop. So the sheep one has wool in it, and at least it should do. It's still done that. I still need to transfer some of this stuff over, but that's what the barrels are going to be for. And I need to work out whose stuff this actually is. I think it might be Alpha Libre's, but yeah, I do want to move this. So yeah, I've got my wheat field and my cows, and yeah, it's quite nice sort of just walking through this and seeing all the different bits, especially as I've done some texture work on my crops recently, so they're all looking a little unique at the moment. So I'm quite happy with that as well. You can see even with the carrots I've got some variation in there. Yeah, and I really like how this area turned out, and the inside of the house you didn't get to see much in the time lapse because it's quite hard to time lapse the inside. So you can see I've got a little chimney area here with some iron bars holding back the actual fire. There's some stuff left over there which I moved here, and I've got a crafting table, and there's a bed in here if anyone needs to sleep the night away, and then I've got ender chest and some other things, so grindstone and what's this called, stone cutter, the mason's block. So you can do your enchanting and combining books and unenchanting things, providing you've got enough XP. And then there's a little chest here, which I think I might put some lapis in, just so you can actually use this setup for enchanting. So I need to grab that. And then little chests just around, this little staircase up, which I was quite pleased I managed to get this staircase to work on an angle, and it looks all right, and you've got this little window underneath it. So I was quite pleased with how this turned out. And then upstairs, I haven't really decorated this yet. I've put in a furnace array here. It's not huge. It's just meant to be if you've got a bunch of stuff to smelt, you can go through here, and that needs some fuel in. So I might fill that up as well in a bit when I have a chance. And yeah, you can see some of the leaves coming through the roof, which I think adds to the aesthetic a little bit. It's very overgrown, and you've got plants breaking through. You can see the vines are actually on the outside of some of these windows. Go out this door and out over to this side. So I've got flowers, and there's stuff like bone meal in here, so you can get more of them. And cactus are over on the desert bit, and I've got beetroot. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how it all came together, and I managed to get all the different crops in. And I think there's enough here that if you wanted to come and collect them, there's a useful amount, but none of them are industrial farms. So if you want loads, you're going to have to do your own still. I've even got some sweet berry bushes in here. You can see some, I've varied the colours a bit. Ow! Okay, I probably should have left more of a gap between them, because it's quite hard to walk between them without getting prickled by the bushes. And yeah, this path, I think I'm just going to turn this into more natural terrain, because I was the one that dug it out thinking that the path from the other side here was going to go straight through, and now it doesn't. But now I've done this, and I'm really pleased with how this has ended up looking. I feel like the rest of this is looking a little neglected, so I think that might be next episode, or possibly as I've just done a whole load of spawn area work, maybe the episode after I might come back and do some more decorations around this bit, maybe some custom trees or something like that. I need to add in some more lampposts and There's still plenty to do. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this has turned out. But I think that's going to be all from me for this episode. As always, I'd love to hear your feedback in the comments section down below the video. I've been Recoded Zaphod, and thanks for watching.